Sri Lanka, and other neighboring countries. Ladies and gentlemen, I am thrilled and excited to welcome very dynamic, versatile HR leader, Mr. Tobin J. Williams. We call him Tob, to this prime time leadership excellence series called New DNA of Leadership. Welcome, Tob. It is indeed my honor to introduce such an esteemed guest of honor who is Vice President Human Resource with Acute Care and Physician Group ProMedica Health Systems based out of Ohio in USA. Welcome, Tob, to this program.
Good morning, Sawadi Kap. Good afternoon to those of you in Europe. Namaskar, Salamat Pagi, Ohio, Kamsahamnida. To everyone in the global audience, it's a pleasure this morning, this afternoon, this evening to be a part of this esteemed panel. So thank you very much for the invitation. I look forward to our exchange.
Wonderful talk. Let me first have an introduction of such a great business HR leader who is from US and he has worked in Asia Pacific a lot. We call him Tob, currently the Vice President Human Resources, and formerly he Vice President South America, reporting to George Thomas, former Senior Vice President Global Human Resources with General Motors, has built up an incredible global career in two major sectors of economy. Extremely well respected from his function knowledge, the wisdom, and the delivery has, with the results, has been his hallmark in transforming organization. When you look at Tob, he brings over 34 years of extensive global operations and corporate experience in human resources with business. This experience has led him through end-to-end responsibilities, both in human resources and across various functions, all of which acquiring superior competency in investigations, data analysis, data presentation, and recommendation for action. These investigations range from simple labor contracts, disputes, employee labor grievances, cases, to more serious cases involving theft, sexual harassment, fraud, inappropriate behavior, violation of company code of conduct, leadership behaviors, as well as others. In these 34 years, Tob has led or participated in an esteemed 150 cases. Tob began his career with General Motors in 1983 as a college graduate in training CGIT in Flint, Michigan. Having spent more than 5 years in production manufacturing as a production supervisor, Tob transitioned to human resources as the coordinator for joint training programs for General Motors truck assembly of increasingly responsible position in human resource, including supervisor plant safety, supervisor labor relations, salaried personnel and administration, as well as assistant plant personnel director. In May 1994, Tob was appointed as the corporate employee benefits for staff manager, pension and retirement. He served in this position for approximately 2 years. Having completed this assignment in the corporate employee benefits, Tob was appointed to the position of Manager Human Resources, Truck Group Staff Manager, North American Staffing Center, Manager Human Resources Manufacturing, and Manufacturing Engineering and Quality. All these positions at national and local negotiation committees with United Automobile Workers and International Union of Electrical Workers. Huge experience of handling labor. In 2003, Taub was appointed Vice President Human Resources in the country where we spent 16, 17 years, that is General Motors Thailand, and Director Human Resources for the ASEAN operations, which included Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and later in 2006, he was Vice President Human Resources, General Motors India as well. That's why he's speaking so many languages. In 2007, Tom was appointed to the position of Director, Regional Director, Human Resources for Asia Pacific, and later General Manager, International Operations. 2010, Tom repatriated back to United States and appointed as the position of Director, Organizational Capability. There were two final appointments with Tom. 2012, Executive Director, Human Resource Corporate Staff. 2017, Vice President, Human Resources and General Manager for South America. This role, this Tom led with core HR responsibilities for South American region. Prior to this, he was also Executive Director, Human Resources, Corporate Staff, Communication, Information Technology, Public Policy, Legal, and Human Resources. Taub is a graduate of Central Michigan University, both as Bachelor's of Science and Masters of Public Administration. Taub is the former Board of Director of United Negro College Fund nationally and work for the education locally. He also serves on the board of Urban League for Michigan, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Musical Hall, and Perfecting Church. For a corporate perspective, when you look at him, he was the former chairperson of General Motors African Industry Network, executive champion of National Carolina, as well as A&T and North Carolina Visitor Board member, perfecting Church Board of Directors. Oh my God, fascinating background, Tom. I am really impressed to see the fascinating background of yours. Tom, we are going to be here for next 1 hour. I am going to share some questions with you, and I would request you to respond to my questions. In the meanwhile, there are people who have joined on Zoom, they have joined on various other platforms, and I will request them to please park their questions. And once we are through, then I will take their questions. And those who are on the Zoom can themselves ask the questions. That is how we are going to be working today. Is that okay with you, Tom?
Absolutely fine. Thank you, DK.
Tom, your journey of HR leadership over these 3.5 decades has been immensely beautiful, wonderful. I am very keen to know about your upbringing, Tom, as a child, know about your childhood traits, behaviors, your parents, your mentors. What kind of mentorship led to bring out of you the Tom Williams, what we see today in the corporate world?
Oh, well, that's a very good question, DK. So I thought about it considerably, and there are a couple of key things. My mom is very much a disciplinarian, so I lived a very disciplined, very rigorous, structured growing up childhood. She was very open-minded in the sense that she pushed me to be adventuresome. She loved adventure. So exploration, adventure, creativity, exploring the mind, exploring possibilities were always tenets of my growing years, my youthfulness. And so those things just naturally became a part of my DNA. I never had in my mind in 1,000 years that some of the things that I've been able to do and to be a part of would ever be realized. Even though I had the seeds planted very, very early in my childhood, there's some things to this date that I have not been able to get away from. One of them is my mother is notorious for being on time for everything. She is extremely very organized, very anal when it comes to structure. And to this day, it doesn't matter what country I'm in, what time zone I'm in, where I find myself in the world. To this very day, I am never, literally never late for a meeting. I'm always early. I can't get away from it. It's something she taught me, and it's bedded in my DNA. It's just inherent for me.
Great respect to your mom, who really gave you that disciplined life. And as a leader, and especially as an HR leader, we need to be highly disciplined. And
Right.
you're living by those values. My salute to you, Tom.
Yeah.
Fascinating to know about it. My
But
second
to but
question.
get to your other question about mentors, you know, growing up when I did and where I did, mentors weren't a category of people that you could say, okay, this person is my mentor, this person is my mentor. What you choose to find, what you happen to find, uh, is that they're influential people that you come across. And so some of the people that I came across in my lifetime were men and women that significantly helped to shape and complement those things that my mother and father shared with me early on. My uncle, who was perhaps one of the first African American men that I became acquainted with, who had, just about completed his PhD, an exceptional man, extremely smart man. I learned a lot about how to function in the corporate world by observing him. And there was another African American female in General Motors who was absolutely incredible. And she would quietly take me to the side and say, Tobin, I want you to focus on this. I need you to look at this. I need you to consider this. I need you to kind of move in this area in order to refine and further define your skills. And found themselves to be very complimentary to the things that my mother had shared. And when I say that there's been a variety of mentors, I've had them from all shapes and sizes, all cultural backgrounds. All of them have contributed significantly into the making of who Tobin Williams is. And I never will forget them for their contribution. I can literally go back, and even my bad bosses taught me something. And they taught me what I didn't want to be, right? But my good bosses taught me that I wanted to be great. I may not have ever attained that, but they certainly shared with me the elements of greatness to paint a picture for me, really how to be great where you are and impact not only the business, but the lives of the people you touch.
Fantastic. I mean, impressive. And that's the fact of life. You have many types of mentors. Like I have mentors like Dr. Kiran Bedi, Padma Shri Pritam Singh, but then I have friends who
Right.
have contributed to my life. Some of you have you met them on my last program when you were with us in the month of July 2020 during COVID days. Oh, we are still in COVID days, but then mid of COVID, and they have contributed. I can tell you even now, when you look at this Aditya Vijay Sagar, Ashok Priyadarshi, in Narula, Vivek Harkoli, and some of these people, they have not been my bosses, but they have been my mentors in supporting what I do. I always say what I am today is a product of many people. And
That's exactly
I
right.
agree with you.
Exactly right.
I certainly agree with you. My mom, my bosses, Mr. D.K. Jain, Mr. Alok Lohia, some of the bosses whom I did not like, they did not like me. Even they contributed to me what I am today. Hello,
Exactly.
for example. I
Exactly.
mean, he has contributed to my life a lot. So there are different types of mentors who keep coming to you. And today also when you work, so you have many mentors. When you look at In Narula from Thailand, the Thai Sikh, I mean, he is another mentor of mine. Ashok Priyadarshi worked, today he is the Vice President Human Resources, and he worked with me as my manager HR, but I learned from him.
Right.
Vivek Harkoli worked with me as the director of marketing for the entire Europe, but I learned from him.
Right.
Aditya Sagar, I learned from him. So there are people in various places who keep coming and working and helping you to grow. I think that was very fascinating, and that is a very, I respect you what you said. My question is, now when I look at your background and I saw that in first 5 years, you worked on shop floor in the production department, manufacturing. What were those 5 years? Because I always believe in my life when I hire a person who has got who wants to work in HR and has an HR qualification, but I always tell them, because I have been more towards manufacturing 32 years, that how much time do you spend on shop floor with the people? So I am keen to know, this 5 years of your work experience, how much did you help in bringing out the HR leader of top today?
So that's a very good question. And it really happened to be perhaps one of the most significant pillars of my career, right? Because I had just come back from an academic environment. So I was in a university for 6.5 years, and the academic environment can be very bubble, very much a bubble. You are insulated with, yes, a variety of opinion, a variety of people, but typically it's a very academic perspective on things. So there may be a diversity of thought and opinion inside of that, but it's always a very academic approach to problem resolution, so forth and so on. It wasn't until I became a production supervisor inside of General Motors that I started to become aware of a couple things. First of all, what is the core? What drives the business? Where is value created? And what drives the profitability inside of the company? So it, prior to that, again, in the academic environment, you're not spending a lot of time thinking about profitability. You're thinking about an academic approach to issues. But now I am tossed into a whirlwind, so to speak, where you are in a manufacturing environment trying to understand the dynamics of that environment, which is really a microcosm of the city in which the plant was around. So you had a variety of people. Here I was, very much a young man, supervising, leading, guiding people who were twice my age. I had 3 or 4 times the education as they did. And so it was a challenge trying to get them to identify with them and them with me, because I was looked upon as a child. Obviously, they had more functional knowledge about how to assemble a GM product than I did. And so I was, and you add on to that I wasn't very mechanically inclined. So, I had 2 hurdles to jump over. But it was a learning for me in the sense that it was a unionized environment. And at that particular time, it was very confrontational. So business and unions, the two just didn't mix. It was oil and water. So how do you take a college graduate, toss them into that environment, never having worked on either side of the union management relationship? How do you bring that together? How do you reconcile that with the academic perspective? So how do you now begin to understand the importance of profitability, how your skill set drives value for the organization? And then how do you begin to identify with the people that you're responsible to lead? How do you get them to understand that the work that they do, as small as it may be or as big as it may be, at the end of the day, it's a product that customers have to want, and it's a value that customers are willing to pay top price for. So how do you begin to resonate? How do you begin to identify for them the importance of the work that they do. And so I found myself in that tsunami, that whirlwind, to kind of bring all that together. It was a matter of me working on me to understand the dynamics of the business and where I was in that whole process. But it was also important for me to then transform myself from a college graduate into a leader. How do I begin to identify with the people I'm responsible to lead and establish enough credibility where then they are willing to follow?
Wonderful. Yeah, Tom, your career and my career seem to be a similar one because I also come from manufacturing and all along worked with manufacturing. And now today, when you see what I do in the world at various places, and especially in terms of, you know, uh, sharing those experiences with the world. And in the meanwhile, I can see Minu Tuteja, again, she's like a mentor today. I can see Milani joined from Spain, and I can tell you this is a powerful woman who are driving my women power concept. And Milani is in Spain, very brilliant woman. I learn a lot from her. Minu Tuteja, I learn a lot. I can see Ash Trana. He is now late night in Australia and Brisbane. This guy makes me to learn a lot because he's man of few words, but he is making me learn a lot, though silent, but making me to learn a lot. What I am looking at you is now, when I look at you, uh, so much of experience, whether it was a staffing manager, whether it was an employee relation manager, whether it was a retirement and staff manager, whether it was a plant personal manager, whether it was dealing with unions. Now, it is a composite role. I want myself as well as my attendees who are watching you now or who will be watching you later to know from you what were those challenges and what were the learning you had in these roles, especially on the people processes as an HR leader.
A very good question. So I look, those roles were very early in my career. And the practical reality is, DK, as I give different advice today than I actually followed when I was earlier. I did not have a plan for my career. It was, my career happened by happenstance. There were a lot of good people along the way that helped to guide me, but I had not given the due diligence to trying to figure out what are the next steps. I was too busy getting it every day, getting it, trying to get results, trying to create value, trying to accomplish goals, but I really didn't have the long-term view. Those early assignments proved to be the foundation of the
Was it
career that I had with General Motors and ultimately the career that I'm building here with ProMedica. It was understanding the business fundamentals. It's hard for HR, the role of HR over the years has transformed. We went from one point in time where we were very much a transactional function, where we simply didn't challenge existing thinking. And we were merely just to take orders. We were at the table, but simply to do the bidding of our key leaders inside of the organization. Motors and ultimately the career that I'm building here with ProMedica. It was understanding the business fundamentals. It's hard for HR, the role of HR over the years has transformed. We went from one point in time where we were very much a transactional function, where we simply didn't challenge existing thinking. And we were merely just to take orders. We were at the table, but simply to do to do the bidding of our key leaders inside of the organization, promoters, and ultimately their career. So we're getting a little bit of feedback, so I want to make sure that I cover the point. So we've moved from simply following the direction of leaders as to now where we are a part of the conversation to help guide and frame and to structure key business initiatives. So we have transformed, we have moved away from being more of a transactional organization or function or vertical to much more of a strategic partner in helping to guide and frame the organization going forward. So my first few years and first few jobs inside of the organization was really that, was fomenting and formulating, establishing the foundation for understanding the business. And it is absolutely a critical pillar for building a successful career, is understanding the business. You must have the business acumen to be able to navigate in and out of certain conversations. You don't necessarily need to know every single thing about the business plan or the spreadsheet or the budget, but you need to be able to be confident enough to be able to share the fundamentals of the business, what drives the business, how value is created, how profit is generated, what are the cost drivers inside of the organization, and what are some of the key initiatives that you have inside of the business to address those. So you can't be absent and apart from that and be a strategic player. So the first several years inside of the organization, my focus unintentionally was building a solid foundation to understand the business and to create a brand where I could articulate the business and be a strategic player in having strategic conversations about where we need to go from a business perspective.
Fantastic. It's very important for an HR person to understand the business, understand the needs of the business, and especially you work on the people and the people processes in alignment with business. And the
Exactly.
changing role of HR is totally business HR.
Right.
Tom, that was in the beginning. And then I see you moving to Thailand, my country, General Motors. You were based out of Rayong or what?
Yes, I was actually based out of Rayong. I spent a lot of time in Bangkok, Krung Thep,
Yeah,
Mahanakorn, Rajanak Kosan. Yeah, yeah.
you moved to Bangkok,
Yeah.
Thai operations, from Thai operations, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Philippines, and then you moved finally to India. And I always say in America, do it American way. In Thai, do it Thai way. In India, do it Indian way. In Malaysia, do it Malaysia Bole, Malaysia way. Now, being an HR leader coming from US with a background of born and education and background and work experience of an American, being in America and coming to Asia Pacific, that to a country like Thailand, then Singapore, Philippines, Indonesia, and then to a large country like India. Big one. Different cultures, different thinkings, different styles, different environments. How did you do that? And how
Yeah.
did you manage this transition? And
Well,
what were those opportunities and learning, which I am sure HR leaders who are watching you now or who are going to be watching you later, or business leaders will pick up from this powerful conversation what we have today. I'm very
yeah.
keen to know about Asia Pacific.
Yeah, very, very good question. So my step function changed from the roles that I had in the US to going to Thailand and to Asia Pacific. The real key, there are a couple of big changes. First of all, this was the first time that I actually not only was a functional leader for the HR function, but I was also a key strategic business partner in that I sat on the executive committee. So what does that mean? That simply means that it was my responsibility not only to lead the function, but to represent the function in an executive capacity on the executive committee, where you would make product allocation decisions, capital investment decisions, how we wanted to manage our relationship with the government, so forth and so on. So it was very much a rounded, a 360 view of the business leader. So I was truly a business leader inside of the organization. And in terms of how do I make the adjustment? Well, there are a couple of key factors. You have to have very credible people around you. So fortunately, when I stepped into the role in Thailand, I had some incredible support. The Thais, as you know, are wonderful, ingratiating individuals. The culture in and of itself is very welcoming of foreigners. As with all cultures, they have their things that you do and things you don't do. And so you obviously begin to find out what those are and respect those customs that they have. But what I found is really works for me or really helped me, and it really transcends each and every culture that I was found myself in, and I found myself in a lot of them, is learning the language, having the ability to meet people where they are. Sometimes we tend to think, particularly we as Americans, those of us from the U.S., uh, think that there's one way of doing things. The practical reality is there's really more than one way to do things. You might like scrambled eggs. People scramble eggs differently. And you learn the value of uh, getting from A to B in a very different fashion. Sometimes it isn't a straight line. Sometimes it takes you a third point to get to B, but you eventually get there. And sometimes the result is actually better. So it's recognizing, meeting people where they are, understanding to the extent that you're able to ingratiate yourself into the culture, finding out the nuances, valuing the nuances. And DK, there are a couple of real good examples that I'll share with you. I was in Baroda, India, and I was working in halal. I stayed in a little hotel in a small village there. And the guys that I was working with at the particular time, PK, Ahmed Dorgra, Kunal Patel, and many, many others, Nanchikit, Ranjan, many other folks, Vijay Kalra, they welcomed me into their world. They took me in and began to school me on how people in India think. I began to learn about the various nuances of the culture, to learn and appreciate the various dialects inside of the language. I remember one time, very specifically, DK, I was in Baroda, and it was the weekend. My team had gone home and had worked very hard the week, and so I took the opportunity to go explore. That's that adventure seed that my mother planted, right? I went to the theater, and I went to the theater to watch the movie Guru. It was the first time and the movie was in Hindi with English subtitles. So I sat there in the theater all alone, watching a movie, reading English subtitles for 2 hours. I went back to the office on Monday, and my team says, boss, what did you do over the weekend? What did you do over the weekend? I said, well, I went to the movies. I went to go see Guru. And it was the talk of the team. They wanted to know, why did boss go see Guru? It was all in Hindi. They were just totally impressed by that. And so it was a phenomenal experience, because it taught me to break out of those things that I did not know before. And so, just to share this one last story, and I'll let you get to the second question. I had been in India for almost a year, and I was totally separated from anybody that I knew. So I was an American working in India for a US-based company. And I lived in Baroda in a very small hotel, um, the Sheraton Marua. And when I got ready to leave on the last day, as you normally do, you go through and you say, hey, appreciate all your support. It's been a great experience. Wish you guys the best. I packed up my travel bag, and I was walking down the long corridor and for my driver, and the driver was going to take me to the hotel to get my final bag and take me to the airport. I'm walking down the long corridor, and I get outside of the plant where my driver is. He's there waiting for me. I turn around, there are about 100 employees behind me, right? And they are behind me saluting me. And they said, boss, you have been an incredible leader for us. Wow. And my eyes began to swell up with tears because I didn't realize that I literally fell in love with the country that I lived for a year. And despite all the challenges, the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, the good times and the bad, I really had fallen in love with the folks that were working with me, and I fell in love with the culture. And so it's all about meeting people where they are, embracing the opportunity, and expecting challenge, but going in and doing the very best possible job you can do in a very unfamiliar area.
Beautiful. As I said, I think your journey of excellence and your people connect is being very marvelous. And that's the fact of life. Even when I worked in Thailand, I have a habit when in India I used to go to manufacturing locations. I used to say, "Hey, Basanti, what are you eating?" And the same way I am in Thailand and I will go to Nicole, what are you eating? Oh, what are you eating? How is this food?
Right.
Aloy mak mak na cup? Aloy na cup?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Kap.
Aloy.
Aroy Mark.
I mark, and I can see Mr. Ravi Saigal, the president of India Thai Chamber of Commerce, is right now sitting and watching us. Other side, I see Shekhar Khanna, ex-Luxor, watching us, and I see Spain Milani watching us, and Ash Rana sitting in Brisbane is already put up a question already there, and I see all these people who have been part of my lives. It has been a fascinating journey to be with different colors, different
Right.
environments. And I have many experiences. Vivek Harkoli is here of Lithuania, of England, of Workington, of course, Indonesia and Thailand. And
Right.
people remain the same everywhere. Top, when we look at you, after that, you moved back to US on an assignment which is organizational capability, executive director with public policy, legal, human resource, IT, corporate staff, functions. Now, strategically, when I look at you, you have not left any area of HR which you have not touched. You're very lucky like me. You have touched all aspects of HR, starting from staffing role, compensation benefits, labor unions, and going forward, all aspects. What are you trying to do now? It seems it seems all these roles have been designed for you, Tom. What next?
Well, that's a very good question. When I think about my career, I think about very influential people. Like particularly when I think about Thailand, I think about Kun Sam, Kun Alborn, Kun Sumnuk. I mean, so many people. They help to frame, the what next, right? And
Absolutely.
so, I like I said, I was in. I mean, you shared it already. I was in China for a period of time where Grace, Yao, and so many others were just tremendously supportive of me as I began to kind of grow my experience and knowledge about international operations. I ended my stint at General Motors with GM Brazil or GM South America. Bom dia to my folks in Latin America. Um, it's right now I'm currently working with ProMedica integrated healthcare system, and healthcare is very, very different than manufacturing, particularly as we consider where we are now with COVID-19 pandemic. It's been a significant learning to understand the ins and outs, the dynamics of the healthcare business. Very, very different than manufacturing. Not necessarily unlike the work that we did in manufacturing as it relates to the bird flu, um, all the various pandemics that we experienced heavily in Asia Pacific and not so much here in North America or in our part of the world. But there are many similarities, but I think everyone would agree that COVID has really reshaped our thinking and reshaped how we do business going forward. So I'm actively engaged in helping to transform an HR organization here at ProMedica, where we are moving from a very transactional kind of function to a more strategic function. So it's going to be a journey, and there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's just a long tunnel.
Fantastic. When I look at you, Top, and when I see your background, and you have certainly had a lot of opportunities in the field of HR and business and moving forward. I have had on this show military general, police director general. I have had educationists who are leading institution builders. I have had recently, Alfredo as well as Dr. Sola, who are uh, brilliant leadership doctors of the world. And when I look at you and I look at other HR leaders, I have a question. Though I have been in the global world last almost 17 years with near about 17, 18 countries exposure, I have a question because it's not only for me, it is for those who are watching you now and who are going to be watching you later. And that's a very important aspect. When we talk about global HR leaders, what are going to be? And it is a good learning for those who are going to be picking up the role of global HR in days to come. What kind of common threads, what kind of differences, what kind of approaches, what kind of leadership traits need to be a great global HR leader? Because at the end of the day, this remains same. COVID has taught us that we are all human beings. We remain the same around the world, irrespective of caste, creed, gender, nationality, or religion or color. What is the difference? What will you give your key learnings to the people who are watching you now about global HR leadership attributes, traits, behaviors, capabilities, deliverabilities, engageabilities, flexibilities? What would you give?
Yeah, so, global leadership, the interest in global leaders is very cyclical. Because at one point in time, the whole world was all about globalization. And then, then it was kind of backtracked a little bit, backed up and said, well, maybe it's not about globalization, maybe it's about localization, optimizing local ability. But I think there will always be a modicum, there will always be an element of our work environment, our work world that will always be globalized. And very good, high quality global leaders do a couple of things really, really well. They understand the global landscape. They're able to navigate in and out of cultures very easy, recognizing the sensitivities and able to maximize or leverage their knowledge and experience in that. What works well in Germany doesn't necessarily work well in Thailand. What works in Thailand may not work in the US, neither may it work in Latin America. So you need to have a fundamental, a very solid knowledge of the global landscape, both from a people perspective and from a business perspective. And how do you begin to align the two? You need to understand wherever the global headquarters is, what the global initiatives are, the business alignments, but you need to understand that those will be challenged locally. And you need to be able to be in a position that you have enough integrity with the local folks to be able to drive what needs to be driven. Sometimes integrity is challenged in many of the areas. You need to have enough respect and integrity among your leadership team to be able to stand tall in a very authentic way to say this is something that we can't support from a business perspective. But on the other side of it, you have to be able to stand and say, hey, yeah, I understand the local nuance. But at the end of the day, we are a part of a parent company, and this is what the parent company wants to do. We need to figure out how to make this work. So it's really finding balance. It's really about understanding the nuances and understanding the global landscape, and then figuring out how to bridge the gap between the business and the people and bringing it all together to create value for the overall business. Operationalize what it is you know you need to do in order to create values for shareholder return.
Fantastic. Tom, it's a fact of life that in our day-to-day working, whether we are working in US, we are working in Thailand, or we are working in India or way of working, other side in Europe or in England or in Middle East, people remain the same. And when people remain the same, but there are different environments and different cultures which we need to touch base. Now, when I look at a military officer, and when I look at a police officer, and when I look at an education leader, and when I look at a corporate leader, again, leadership traits remain the same, but they put it differently into various cultures. I was attending a marriage. I met one leader. She is into, police leadership. She's a woman. And recently we had one of the marriages and she's a police leader. When I looked at her impressive police leadership style of connecting, communicating, and moving forward. When I look at someone who is at a business leadership, again, but commonality of leadership remains. And I am actually now getting into a question which is very important, that COVID 2019, and which carried on to COVID 2020. And this has taught us a lot. I want to know from your point of view. There has been many I am not a man to be here on this desktop and talking. I am a man into action, into the ground. But I have also learned in the process. So what has been your issues? How did you approach those issues? And how did you, as an HR business leader, come out and help the employees to be effective, even irrespective of tough situation of COVID?
So in many instances, healthcare is it's very interesting. We have the tech companies that are, have always worked virtually. They have some pretty creative work arrangements with their employees, and they just do things differently. In healthcare, however, it's a fair bit more conservative. And so when the pandemic hit, you were faced with issues and questions that you never had to deal with before. How do you deal with work from home? Because it just simply wasn't done. How do you get leaders to become comfortable with the idea? And at the same time, how do you get employees to understand that you may work from home, but you still have an obligation and responsibility to do that you have been assigned to do? And so it's kind of all about getting leadership ready for the idea. And the practical reality is, DK, we really didn't have a lot of time. I think we determined last night that we were on day 348 of the COVID pandemic here in our healthcare system. And so you can just about imagine when it first started, there wasn't really a lot of conversation about work from home. We didn't know how big it was going to be. It actually became pretty big. I was listening on the news this morning that it's projected that we're going to have over close to 400,000 deaths as it related to COVID. That's significant. So as horrible as all of those numbers are, and they are horrible, it has taught us in business. It doesn't matter whether you're in manufacturing, doesn't matter whether you're in healthcare, doesn't matter if you're in retail. How do you function successfully? Innovation has generated itself. And so it's a matter of teaching leaders who have not done things like this before. How do you become comfortable in this space? How do you move seamlessly to optimize your employees or team members' ability to contribute and to create value and do what it is that they need to do so that you can deliver what it is you're responsible for as a leader? So it's been an interesting journey. I would imagine that we're not done with this journey. I would anticipate that there are going to be significant changes in terms of how cities are shaped and formed. And I would imagine that retail space is going to change considerably. A lot of people move from shopping in malls and that kind of thing to shopping solely with Amazon. You had people who used to feel very comfortable sitting down in restaurants. Now they do DoorDash. And you had people that would go into the market and get their groceries, make their groceries in the market. And now new jobs have been created that you just send in your note, and they have people inside of the markets getting your food and delivering it to you. So as terrible as all of this has been, it has been a opportunity, a crisis that's created and an opportunity, innovation across the spectrum. And it's really the leaders that are going to thrive are those that are able to adapt, to see out what the vision is and not get stuck in thinking that we're ever going to go back to the way it was, because my typical experience tells me that it's never going back that way. I mean, as much as you may like the horse and buggy, there aren't many people riding horse and buggies now. As much as you like the landline or the big cell phone, those aren't coming back. You know, people, the flip phone, I mean, not many people are using flip phones anymore. Everybody's using Samsung or they have an iPhone. So things aren't going back there. They're only going to continue to iterate. And good leaders, quality leaders, reputable leaders, visionary leaders can see the future and begin to bring people along with it.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's amazing. And in fact, that's right. In fact, Milane from our Women Power in Spain is saying, great inside stop. So true. Being open to learning from others and not only being set in our own ways is a great attitude. Milani, thank you very much. Please raise questions. Hey, those who are on YouTube, Facebook, Global Talent Television, please raise questions. Please raise questions. I would like Tom to respond to your questions because I'm getting through. I have just one or two questions now. I can see the President of India Thai Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Ravi Saigal. Please raise questions. Oh, I can see first today. Oh, I was talking about this wonderful lady. Her name is Minu Safaya Rana, and I can see her here. She is that police officer I talked to you. Please raise question. Minu, nice to see you. I can see Shavita Bhatt already joined. Please raise questions. And now I am going to another question now. You remember, Tom, we were together in July 2020 when I got other leaders from India, Canada, Thailand, and Dubai with you on the program, and we talked about global talent. Global talent is the name of my company for sure. Global talent, vocally and locally. I repeat, global talent, vocally and locally. And I respect the Prime Minister of my country. I am a proud Indian. This is my flag. And you see Thai flag because Thailand is my Karma Bhumi. I have both the flags here. And my Prime Minister Modi, he talked about vocally and locally, and I picked up and I decided to do that program with you and with Mr. Labru from Dubai, in from Thailand, and VP Singh, Rajan Datta, many friends of ours from India. And we had, I think, Canadian women also with us. Now, I want to ask you, February 2020, then July 2020, and now we are in Jan 21. How is this word today? Global talent, vocally, locally. Do you think business models, do you think things have changed in the world during the last 10 months?
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of goes to my earlier points that, the way we used to do business, there's some elements of that are going to change considerably. But there are some fundamental principles that won't change. One of them is that we're all about making money. And so that element is going to change. That element isn't going to change. What will change, though, is how we go about making money. And the necessity to have people in the office or where we do business those things that are going to change significantly. How we leverage our resources is going to change differently. How we leverage technology will change differently. Will continue to evolve. So there are some principles that won't change. The profit motive won't change. How we treat and how we innovate will change, and I suspect that it will change fairly fast, particularly with the onset of technology. I mean, prior to COVID-19, having that experience, I mean, people use Zoom sparingly, but now everybody's on Zoom one way or another. The whole phrase that you're on mute means something totally more important now than it did, 10, 12 months ago. We talked about mute on the phone, but now we're talking about mute on Zoom or WebEx or whatever the streaming platform you choose to use. The point that I'm making here is that there are some things that will change and some things that won't. The fundamentals probably won't change. How we achieve the fundamentals will likely change.
Good. I'm going to my last question. Tob, you must have seen last 7, 8 months, I have done another aspect. This is my leadership series on Wednesday. Saturday, I have a series called Hashtag Women Power, a Global Movement. People say that I am mad because I gave a statement 1 million women on this platform by 2020, irrespective of color, creed, caste, nationality, and religion. Women are the biggest power of life. How do you see, because I see more and more women coming into the role of human resources. I have myself mentored many women in various countries to be good HR leaders over the last 20 years. And in fact, one of my student is today becoming my partner in my business. And I told her, come on, join me. And how do you see women as women power, which I am propagating, becoming very strong leadership traits in the corporate world, especially in HR?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. There've been a lot of sensitivity around the whole issue of women in the workforce, equity of women in this workforce, so forth and so on. The practical reality is that our world would be a pretty miserable world without the contributions and the work and the focus and the dedication and passion of women in the workforce and in the home. It's significantly important. And so the one thing that we can never forget is that no matter what field it is, and it may be dominated by men, it may be dominated by women, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the customer that will ultimately impact or influence the decision or will have a big voice in that purchase decision is likely a female, a woman. And so your organization needs to represent the buying public of your product. And it's always a very serious mistake if a business, a segment of society chooses to ignore the value and the contribution of another. Women are critically important. They play a significant role in shaping policy, may play a significant role in shaping how we look at very complex issues, because as men, occasionally we have blind spots and we're just not able to see the big picture. That's the value of diversity. And so women bring a very unique perspective, a unique insight. And some people say they bring a very compassionate perspective. That may or may not be true. I know they bring a different perspective, and that should be welcomed in the workforce. And I would anticipate, and I strongly promote and encourage that we absolutely have to have a female representative voice or voices in leadership in order to help to guide not only the business but our workforce, because many of our workforce is comprised of women. And how can you relate to something that you never experienced? And so you need the voice. You need the voice, but more importantly, we as men, we need the ear. We need the ear to hear what is being said and what we have missed in order to paint the perfect picture of diversity and where we need to go directionally. Just my thoughts.
Very great. Very great. And in fact, I respect what you're saying. And uh, I believe women has a special strength in the personality.
Oh, absolutely.
Special. I mean, there is a special features a woman has got where she will be much more courageous, compassionate, and some of the concrete ideas which can be taken forward in business and that too in HR. I have seen some of my women HR leaders who worked with me, they literally came out something which I would have been, it would have been tough for me. And I remember this thing happened in Afghanistan when I was there with training these Afghan women ministers, senators. It was tough to be in Afghanistan. And I had women team with me. And in Narula and me, we were the only two male. The rest were entire 60 women were 60 women from that country, and then we had other women with us.
Right.
And they supported us, they encouraged us, even during that crisis when it was tough to be there with the security and all that. So they gave us a lot of support. All respect to those women. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I have opened the questions now. And I can see the question which is coming from Ash Rana from Brisbane, Australia. Top. He says CPO or CHRO or CEO, what would you like to have? Or is there any other futuristic role you are looking at?
Oh, very good. So I would say, I'm always interested in CHRO role. Those are the key influencers inside of the organization. The VP role, I've done that, been doing that, and it's very exciting for me. But I think the next challenge to answer the question is really the CHRO role.
Okay, the next question comes, which says, Melanie, how do you motivate employees who are resistant to working from home?
How do you motivate employees who are resistant to work from
Working
home?
from home.
Um, well, that's an interesting question because um, there are some people that work more effectively around the people, right? And they're very gregarious. They want to be surrounded by people because they need the interaction. The practical reality is that in many instances, absent PPE and the other elements of combating the virus, it's just more safe to work at home, to create your own safe bubble and to work. And so you begin to advocate those key things. Hey, look, I understand you want to be in the office. And trust me, we want you in the office, but we can't do it safely. So in the event of your best interest and the best interest of all of our employees, we are implementing the work from home and we're asking everybody to abide by that.
Fantastic. Hey, let's have more questions coming in. Hey, Minu Sapaya Rana, I thought you will raise a question with regard to police leadership. You're watching us today. Nice to see you there. Please ask questions. In the meanwhile, I got Ash Rana. He says, what are the top 3 initiatives you took as a leader after you join a different organization or country, apart from learning about the new organization?
Yeah, so the top 3 things that I sort of go after is number 1 is understanding the business. Number 2 is establishing key relationships. And number 3 is understanding the culture, right? So that's kind of like the first 100 days, meeting with key leadership, understanding the business, understanding what drives the business, what are the key business issues. Number two would be looking at the key influencers inside of the organization, getting to know who they are, establishing relationships with them, building up credibility, and then finally understanding the culture itself. How does things get done? How does work get completed? How is it executed? And what has the history been in that area?
Wonderful. Now, let me go to another question which has come on Zoom. And at Zoom, I can certainly request Mr. Vijay Kalra. I unmute you, Mr. Kalra. You can ask your question yourself. You have put two questions here. Here I am unmuting you. Please go ahead and ask question. Mr. Vijay Kalra. And please introduce yourself.
So, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
please
Bob.
introduce yourself.
Yeah, so Tobin, first is my name is Vijay Kalra. Nowadays I work with Mahindra and I'm part of Mahindra leadership team and reporting to Anand. So,
Wow.
to be very frank, more than question, Tobin, there were two observations which I said. One is that among the GM expats, no, I think you are among very few who left a very, very long impact or impression on all of us, no, and still we remember you and still remember. And then when you were talking about discipline, I still remember walking to your office around 7 o'clock in the evening and then saying, what's the plan for dinner today? And you said that 7 o'clock means my dinner is over. So wherever I am, whatever happens, and then finally it turned out to be an apple because nothing else was there. So admire your discipline, admire your relationships, your ability to make a relationship. I think when we look at HR, sometimes I find HR people not really related to the word human, but you were very human in all the decisions, in all the deliberations, in all the things you were doing. No, so thank you very much, Tobin. Remember remember those days, and still, I'm really proud of your friendship. No, thank you, and thanks, Mr. Bakshi, for getting a chance to speak to Tobin today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kalra, for joining. I hope this discussion is going to add value to others with your feedback of Tobin, who worked in India till 2013, I think, 2010, 2013. And now you are giving a feedback about Tobin working. I must respect and regard you, Mr. Kalra, for your feedback. And those who are watching us now and who are going to be watching us later, that is where leadership speaks. Even after one decade, people will remember you. People will talk about you. People will share your stories of excellence, leadership excellence. And here is a great leader, Mr. Vijay Kalra from Mahindra, talking about another leader who has worked in India and how did he do that. I must respect you, Mr. Kalra, for coming here, sharing your thoughts and talking about Tom. Wonderful. So nice of you, sir. Okay, let me go to another question now. I'm getting another question from, just a moment. There's another question which is coming from Global Talent TV, and the name is Rahul Singh. Rahul is asking, Tom, when you were in India, and before India, you were in other parts of Asia Pacific, being an American, being in India, and earlier picking up Asia Pacific experience, was it very easy for you to work in India?
Actually, no, it wasn't. Because again, I was actually given the framework to say, hey, Tobin, I need you to go to GM of India. I need you to be there for 2 weeks and we'll have somebody in behind you. And I was living in Baroda. And as you all know, Baroda is a very rural kind of area. And so I was not a vegetarian. I had not been exposed to the Indian culture, which would include the food. And so in many instances, I came into that opportunity with a very narrow mind, quite frankly. I was literally existing on a bag of Bango potato chips, a Hershey's chocolate bar, and a Coca-Cola. That was my diet because I did not, I had a mindset that would prevent me from eating the food. It wasn't until I realized that somebody wasn't coming quickly that I had to change my mindset. And once I changed my mindset, I literally fell in love. I fell in love with India. I fell in love with the culture, which would include the food, the people, everything around it. I remember one time, and I know we're getting close to closing off the session, but I remember I was invited back to India to a Asia Pacific Strategy Board meeting, and I was in the Taj Hotel right outside of Mumbai. And I had just completed a presentation. And you know how it is when you complete a presentation and you do a great job. You're like, oh, I did it. It's great. I feel real good. I went outside of the Taj Hotel, and right outside of the Taj, there's water over there. The Taj is overlooking the water. And so I sat out there, I looked at it, and there are some very impoverished areas right outside of the Taj Hotel. And while it was impoverished, I didn't see it at that moment. It was as if a black and white picture suddenly became colorful. I truly at that moment became self-actualized, where I started to realize just how much I loved the country of India, how much I had learned, how much of a better person I had become because of that challenge, because of that adventure, because of that experience. And essentially, DK, that's how I have approached every single opportunity that I've had, is to take both the good and the bad, the positive and the negative, to build what I think would create a wonderful experience of growth.
Fascinating. Tov, my love for you have increased, my respect for you has increased many folds. And though we know each other now for quite some time, but today when we are interacting on this platform, I think I understand more of you now. I'm going to catch up with you mid of 2021 in case everything goes fine and I am able to come to America. That's what the plan.
Absolutely.
My dear friend, I am now, putting unmute Aditya Vidyasagar from Lucknow, very well-known name in the social, work, what he does in the country. Aditya, go ahead with your question.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk to Tobin. Well, it was great listening to you, and there was so much to learn from. And I really wonder that how you did manage multifaceted ways to tackle with the multifaceted places that you have been to. I mean, that's a real creating resources out of human resource. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing with us your experiences and your practices. That was a lot to learn from you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Aditya, and thank you, VJ. You know, you're my guy, man. My experience in India was life-changing for me, and you are a very big part of that. So thank you.
Each and every learning is always very important. And I tell you today, I visited one of my great friends in HR leadership. And I was with my two colleagues, and I did tell them on the way that I'm going to meet this fascinating HR leader. And when I met him, he had gone through a lot of pain last year or so. I was not able to look at eyes to him because a person has gone through a personal pain. And the way he showed his courage of moving forward and his team around, and he was giving a lot of respect to his team and telling, because of this team, I have the strength of taking things forward. So there are leaders in life who, irrespective of going through that pain themselves, are there to serve the masses, those leaders. My guru, Padma Shri Dr. Pritam Singh, Tob, you know, he always used to say, and in June before his death, he told on my program, he says, leaders who work for themselves do die. Leaders who work for others never ever die. So when I was coming from that office and we went back to the our own office, so we were talking about how difficult, how tough it would have been for this leader, but then how he is taking it forward and moving forward and creating still that leadership excellence, the aura of leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, these are fantastic learnings for us. And I can take more and more questions, but Tob, we have already gone beyond our time. That's what I expected with a person of your capability, person of your stature. I must thank you. And I would request my global talent company director in Narula, our Thai Sikh, who is born in Thailand, 4 generations in Thailand. He is the director of Global Talent Thailand, to propose a vote of thanks before we close. And Tom, it has been, I have many more questions, but I think it's tough for me to move forward. Achan in Sawadikap and
สวัสดีครับผม
yeah, Kun Tob here.
Yes Mr. Tobin
Varsha,
Williams
Varsha, just a moment. Achan in, we can put your video on. Varsha can help you.
okay
He can. I promote to panelist.
Okay.
all right sir can you see me now sir
Yeah. Your backdrop is that Kashmir
okay
backdrop.
excellent
Yeah. Okay. That doesn't matter. Okay.
it still is there but I hope it's okay yes but anyway good evening Mr. Tobin Williams we have met once during
Yes.
the vocally and locally session. And at
Yes.
that time also, I was looking forward, Dr. Bakshi and myself, to welcoming you to Thailand. And the invitation is still on, sir. And I hope we will definitely meet real soon, either here or in
Absolutely.
India.
Yes.
All right. Excellent, sir. Let me go on to give a few finer points of what you have said. During this COVID time, fundamentals will not change. How we achieve our vision and goals may change, and that's very important. It's brilliant. So how we go about doing the business will definitely change. Certain things will not change, many things will change. And he gave a lot of examples to clarify the point on things that will change and things will not change. He also mentioned about the perspective, very important perspective of women, and that they have a very unique insight. So sometimes they need to be on the board in order to hear their views so that the business can be more successful. How do you function successfully under different circumstances, especially during the COVID-19? So you need to adapt and you need to be accountable even if you're working from home. And most importantly, you need to deliver results, because at the end of the day, that's what the business is all about. Now, as far as the cross-cultural experiences, people all over the world are the same. We have the need. We all want to be successful. We all need to be appreciated. We all don't want to make mistakes, but we do sometimes and we learn from it. And in sum, what Top is advising all of us is to be open-minded, to be a great listener, and to ask a lot of questions in order to understand the different ways that things are done over the world. The 3 important things that he advised: understand the fundamentals of the business, build relationship, know your people, and understand the differences in culture. And as he also mentioned, we are all the same. But when we come to work, we need to wear a hat of a professional. When we go back home, we be a great Indian, we be a great Thai, we be a great Americans.
Okay.
And to sum it up, everyone you know in your life is a teacher. You learn from them. Keep your mind open, keep your ears open, keep your eyes open. We all can learn from each other. Thank you very much. It has been a great pleasure to listen to the discourse. It's just wonderful.
Thank you very much, Achanin, Kapun Mark Rakap, and Top. Thank you so much. I wish you all the attendees, Top, all the attendees, a great happy new year 2021 after tough 2020. And I always say, and I also want to communicate here, please declare 2021 as the best year of your life. Keep talking to people, best year of your life, because you will spend that around billions of people in the world, and we will have 2021 best year of our life in the human race after tough 2020. With that, I close this evening with special thanks, hand-folded special thanks to Top and those who joined, and those who will be watching this later. Thank you for being here. New DNA of leadership every Wednesday evening, and next Wednesday evening, we have another leader of excellence sharing success story and leadership challenges and issues and becoming effective leader for the human race. Tom, wish you a great day ahead. You are 8:30 in the morning. You are starting your day, and enjoy. And those who are in Australia, it is midnight. Good evening to everybody who is in Europe and who are in India, Asia Pacific. Thank you very much, and all the best and good luck.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Bakshi, and thank you, Mr. Tobin Williams.
Thank you very much. Okay, all the best.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye-bye. Those who have joined, who can watch later, please watch the leadership excellence of these great leaders who do come to me on this Wednesday series. This is fascinating, and let's share this story around the world to the people of these wonderful leaders who are impacting human race, irrespective of caste, creed, gender, nationality, color, and religion. With that, good night, all the best. Thank you very much.
Good night, sir.
Ratri Savat Kap.
Ratri Savat Kap. Good night, all. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir. Kapun Kap. Bye-bye.